So I want to make a video about brakes, quality brakes. So I want to talk about the derivation of essentially rim brakes. I don't want to talk about disc brakes because generally I'm referring to folding bikes. And disc brakes are not ideal on folding bikes because the rotors can bend, all that jazz. And, if you're traveling, so it's generally not preferable. So I'm going to be talking about rim brakes. I'm going to talk about, how they evolved, right? And what's better. So, okay, first of all, nowadays every brake is essentially a V brake. So I have to talk about what a V brake is. And so these caliper brakes, back in the day, wow, what was back in the day? Whew, I think that was 30 years ago. And I would say about 20 years ago, V brakes came into existence, right? So, these regular rim brakes, they would curve towards the rim. They would just, curve, in an arc. And they work great, actually, as long as you adjusted them properly. So they would bite down on the rim at the same time. They work perfectly. The problem is that not everybody adjusted them properly. A lot of people just, and so sometimes they just didn't function so well, right? Lo and behold, these V brakes came. And what are V brakes? So they move perpendicular to the rim. They don't move in an arc. They just move straight in. And so essentially they work the same as the old school brakes, but they're easier to adjust because you don't have to worry about the arc, right? And so I think nowadays everything is a V brake. I don't know if they call them V brakes at all nowadays, or I mean, some people might not, but they come in. That's just normal. The old school stuff actually didn't work as well because people didn't know how to adjust them, and so they wouldn't work only because of the adjustment dynamic. So anyway, so now we have these V brakes. Almost everything that's a rim brake nowadays is a V brake, and they work really well, right? They work really well. So how do you know you got a good set? Well, generally back in the day, a lot of brakes were CNC machined and they're just not as strong as the cold forged stuff. So you want to have something, obviously it's cold forged aluminum, obviously aluminum, right? Something that's lightweight. And the curvature of the framing to the V brake means it doesn't allow it to flex in certain planes. And so that's what you want to look at the shape. Everybody has their own style, their own way to make sure that the brakes are going to be stiff. Because at the end of the day, when these brakes are on the rim, they have to be really stiff and solid. And so if they're bending and flexing, and it's not going to work. And so there should be some curvature in the brake to make sure it's not going to bend. Right? The curvature is there on purpose. If it's straight, it's going to flex. So you have a little bit of curvature to make sure it can't go out away from the rim or twist at all, obviously. And so generally the Tektro brakes we use are really, really nice. They're very cost effective. I mean, I think Tektro overall has been just amazing for us. So many of the parts are just such high quality and they're so cost effective. The brake levers, as far as Tektro goes, are just the bomb. They're my favorite brake levers of all time. They don't cost anything. So, if you're looking for brakes, I would encourage you to consider Tektro. Get whatever you want, get the color, the right, make sure it looks fine, make sure it matches the rest of your components on your bike. But something to consider would definitely be Tektro because of the value proposition there. And so make sure it's made out of aluminum, make sure it's forged, and make sure it doesn't flex. So the design shouldn't allow flex, right? So it's going to be a solid piece. And, make sure the brake pads are good. And if depending on where you live, if you're in a rainy environment or, super dry, your local bike shop might have recommendations for brake pads for your given area. So make sure to find out from them. But generally, brakes you should take a look at and you should be able to tell a good quality one from, maybe a cheaper, lower end one. Thank you very much for watching. Appreciate it.